So in today's video, I wanted to compare a couple of different methods for drying a vehicle after it's been freshly washed. And those are either using a car dryer or a traditional drying towel. So I'm going to be taking you through the pros and cons of each particular method to help you decide which really is going to be the best option for you. I'm going to start off by talking about the car dryer method first, and I am using here my Blowair RS car dryer that I purchased about 2.5 years ago. So I have used this extensively now, so I've really worked out what the advantages and disadvantages of this particular method are. Starting off with the positives, the main reason you would really use a car dryer is to have a contactless method of drying. So this is going to be really beneficial if you are working on a corrected vehicle that has really immaculate paintwork and you want to limit contact as much as possible in order to minimise swirls and scratches. This is going to be particularly useful if you are working on soft paintwork. So I have a Mazda MX-5 and that does have really quite delicate paintwork, and it is one of the main reasons why I purchased this in the first place, as it is the safer way of drying the paintwork. The second benefit of using a car dryer is it avoids all the annoying drip marks that you get from areas like the door mirrors, door handles and even around the badges and emblems. We've all been there where we've gone around the vehicle with a drying towel, come back an hour later and noticed one of those annoying drip marks that's evaporated and left a hard water stain, and using a dryer to blast out all these areas just completely avoids that. It also prevents hard watermarks building up around areas like the badges, sometimes on vehicles that are a few years old, particularly on darker finishes. You can notice all the hard water stains around the badges, and this is going to really help to reduce that. Another advantage of using a car dryer is that I do think it's a more effective way of drying wheels and tyres. Again, it's contactless, so it's going to limit marring on delicate finishes, but there are also particular wheel designs where there are loads of intricate areas or even a lip behind the spokes, which is really difficult to dry using a traditional drying towel. So the wheels that I have in my car in particular now are a bit of a nightmare to dry just using a towel, so I do always use my dryer on these, as otherwise I'm definitely going to end up with water spots. It also really helps get the tyres completely dry for dressing, and you don't get any water runoff from the treads interfering with the tyre dressing applicator, which is very handy as well. And another slight benefit is that you're not going to have to wash your drying towel all the time. Drying towels are obviously massive and they do take quite a long time to dry. So if you're using a dryer, that's just not something you're going to have to worry about. Now onto the disadvantages of using a car dryer or a leaf blower or pet dryer or any kind of method like this. The first one being is that the car really does need some level of protection on it in order to use this method properly. So there is a common misconception that it has to be a ceramic coating. It really doesn't. It just needs to have a very water repellent finish on it. So this can be for a wax or a sealant as well. As long as the water is beading nicely, then you shouldn't have any trouble. But if you are drying unprotected vehicles, then this really just isn't going to work. The second disadvantage is that it is a very loud piece of equipment. So the actual motor of the machine itself isn't that bad. However, as soon as you start blasting the car with it, it creates a very high-pitched sound, which is pretty awful, to be honest. So if you have a lot of neighbours and you don't have a good relationship with them already, then be prepared for it to get a little bit worse if you are using this frequently. And another drawback is that it is definitely a slower method of drying the vehicle. If you are going for a completely contactless dry using the blower, then it's going to take about 10 to 15 minutes depending on the size of the vehicle and how well protected it is. That's obviously going to be a lot slower than using a drying towel. Coupled with that, using a dryer to dry the entire vehicle in summer does come with some challenges as well. If the temperature is a little bit higher in the air or the panels are starting to get a touch warm, then you do run the risk of the water drying out by the time you've got round the entire vehicle, and you might have to go round with a quick detailer spray to remove those water spots, which obviously at this point means you are going to have to use some kind of contact, so it really diminishes one of the main advantages of it. It is also quite an expensive piece of equipment, so this one I'm using is £185. There are more expensive and cheaper options than this, but it is another piece of equipment to buy. Drying towels comparatively are a lot cheaper. And finally, depending on your access to plug sockets, it can be a little bit of a faff to set up. If you don't have a plug socket very close to the vehicle, then you are going to have to use an extension cable, fully unwind it and then put it away again, and that can definitely add some time there as well, and sometimes you might just really not be in the mood to do it. Now I want to talk a little bit more about towel drying, and I'll start off with the advantages. So first off, obviously, as I said, it does take a lot less time to dry the vehicle. I'm usually getting around most cars in about 5 minutes using a drying towel, so it's a lot better if you are in a rush or it's in summer where you need to dry the car a little bit faster. Another advantage is that it will work on both unprotected and protected cars. Now granted, drying towels do tend to work a bit better if the car does have protection, However, you still won't have any trouble on an unprotected vehicle if you are using a decent quality towel. And finally, drying towels are really pretty cheap comparatively, so you can get a very good quality one for between sort of £20 and £25. You can of course get cheaper ones as well, but these tend to be a little bit smaller and maybe don't have quite as premium blend. Overall though, regardless of which towel you get, it's going to be much cheaper than buying a car dryer. Now, the disadvantages of using a towel to dry the vehicle are firstly that it has an increased risk of damaging the paintwork by swirling it or causing marring. So there are a few things you can really do to help minimise this. You can use a softer, plusher towel compared to a twisted loop drying towel. You can pat the surface dry rather than dragging the towel across it. And you can also use a drying aid as well to help add a little bit more lubrication. But there is no denying that it is a method that involves contact, so inevitably it's just not as safe as using a car dryer. The second disadvantage is it's a lot more difficult to get water out of areas that are prone to trapping it. For example, like the door mirrors, you are potentially going to get some drips after drying the vehicle with a towel. So I have seen some people actually wrap the towel around these areas to help collect that water. But again, it's just not going to be as effective as using a blower. So when I first purchased my car dryer, I was committed to drying my vehicle every single week, just using that bit of kit, and I essentially stopped using a drying towel completely. I have since evolved my approach in order to use a bit of a hybrid of the two. So what I like to do now is just blow dry the car first, getting rid of a fair bit of water from the panels, but focusing more on those more intricate areas that I wouldn't be able to get a drying towel into. And then I follow up by using a nice soft plush drying towel afterwards to just gently pat the panels dry. And I think using this combination of the two is really useful, as you do just get the best of both worlds. I don't get any of the drip marks, but the overall process is a lot faster, and I'm not using my car dryer for as long, so I'm not annoying people in the local area. So if you are looking to purchase a car dryer or a new drying towel, what I'm going to do is pop a couple of links on screen, first to the review of my car dryer, and secondly to my video on the best drying towels that I've used and a comparison of the pros and cons of each of them. If you have enjoyed this video though, it would be brilliant if you could drop it a like, and thanks very much for watching.